Hey, soccer fans, welcome back to the Feed the Fire podcast. Major League Soccer's decision day has come and gone. We know who is in, we know who is out, we know who are the wild cards this season, and unfortunately, our hometown Chicago Fire is once again on the outside looking in 6 straight years without a playoff berth. 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. That's right. I can still do math. 6 straight years without a playoff berth and many, many more without a playoff win. In today's episode, we are going to, of course, give my picks and predictions for the playoffs, but we've got to recap the Chicago Fire season. We're going to start doing that today with a look back at their final game, a look back at some individual performers, and how our team leaders stack up against the rest of the league. Also got a couple little Fire rumors I want to share with you. Give a quick shout out to a longtime listener, Tio Luis. Thank you for supporting the show, even going way back to my prior podcast, The Sons of a Pitch. Great to know that you're out there listening as well. So for all of that content and much, much more, stay tuned. Well, Fire fans, Major League Soccer fans, we are once again back here at the Feed the Fire podcast with our heads hanging a little bit lower than usually, having to talk about the Chicago Fire not making the playoffs. Usually I like to start things upbeat, talking about my son's under-8 team that I've been coaching this season, but unfortunately, they were just as disengaged in their final game as the Chicago Fire were. It was a rescheduled game from a rainout, moved fields, moved the game time from Saturday mornings to Sunday afternoons. A couple of the kids, I think, just wanted to put on an individual show in their last game, and playing the best team in the league was not the time to do that. So they got outplayed, they got outclassed that game. But you know what? I'll tell you, with a 5-win, 2-draw, 1-loss season, those kids should not be hanging their heads low. And I'm really proud of these kids as to how much they grew as individual players, as how much they grew as a team over the course of 2 months. And honestly, it was such a rewarding experience to be able to work with these kids week in and week out, like to teach a kid how to properly line his shot up, where to strike the ball, how to keep his foot at the right angle when he's striking, teaching other kids just the basics of the game. What's a forward? What's a defender? Like how to make good goalkeeping decisions, just basic stuff. It was really rewarding, and I want to encourage everyone out there, get involved in youth sports at some level. Get involved in youth anything at some level. Whether you teach a music class, whether you coach a team, whether you volunteer or work at the park district, whatever it is, it's such a rewarding thing, and it really pays dividends. And any effort that you put in is rewarded tenfold and is multiplied tenfold when you're working with kids. So I really encourage everyone to get out there and do that. And congratulations to everyone on the Stars team. Now let's go back to our MLS hometown team. Not much happier things to talk about. And, as much as I can say, great, our youth team is really developing and coming along, I'm not going to pull a Frank Klopas here, because that was his post-game comments. Well, we accomplished a lot this season. We improved, et cetera, but you still didn't make the playoffs, Frank. That was the goal. And honestly, I don't think your team did improve all that much. It's the same storylines we talk about. Looking at the statistics of this 1-0 loss at New York City, again, the Fire were completely disengaged. They were not ready to go. You have Shaqiri, who's supposed to be your leader, at least in play, if not an actual leader on the pitch and in the locker room for this team, coming off a really good performance with Switzerland, and then decides just to mail this one in. I actually saw a comment online. Someone said, yeah, let's keep Shaqiri for next year. And the reply was, well, his lack of running is a bit of a problem. Like, that's the analysis of Xherdan Shaqiri, your highest paid player and star, doesn't run much. Not going to have a lot of success with that kind of analysis, with that kind of play. But in this game, the Chicago Fire ended up with about 50% of possession, 15 shots, but only 4 on net. Again, not efficient with their offense. 416 total passes at 80% passing accuracy. So another average day on possession, but you got to look, they've had 50% possession and only attempted 416 total passes at an 80% rate. So they're not getting possession in dangerous areas. They did whip in 23 crosses. They only had 3 offside, though, so they really weren't stretching the back line that much, playing a lot more direct in this match, it looked like. They did outgain New York City as far as duels won, 55-41. So they were winning some of those 50-50 balls. And with Chris Brady having to launch things downfield, it's good that they were doing that. They did win their tackles 7-6 against New York City. So you saw some decent defensive play at times. Not that New York City is some offensive juggernaut this season. The Fire should be doing this against a team like New York City. But they ended up also 17 clearances, 9 fouls. No cards against the Fire, 3 yellows against New York City. But the Fire, again, cannot put in a complete game performance. They cannot finish the few opportunities they have. They cannot create. And really, you saw the Fire really start to kind of take control and have some of that urgency like towards the end of the match. This was your playoff game. This game against New York City started the playoffs practically for the Chicago Fire, and they had no urgency about them. That is terrible coaching and a terrible mindset in this locker room, and it's all for it is more for the reason of just blowing up this whole roster. I'm starting to see a lot of people talking about who do you want to keep, who do you want to get rid of. You need to get rid of the vast majority of the squad because that mentality is now permeated throughout this locker room. And if the speculation is true that current assistant coach, I forget his first name, Kostenoglu, who was brought over mid-season, who was named an assistant, who will likely be elevated to head coach next year. Again, that's the speculation. Why else would you bring in a part-time assistant unless you're just giving Frank Lopez a buddy to bounce some ideas off of? And then why did you have C.J. Brown and Zach Thornton there all the time? I don't know. Again, you answer one question for the Fire and another one comes back up. But if this was the playoffs here, you need to get rid of this terrible mentality. If the Fire can't even come out and get ready for this game, get rid of everyone on that coaching staff, get rid of the vast bulk of your players. I'd say keep Kutsias, Guti, Pineda, Turan, and Olmsberg, and Brady, and that's about it. And Jonathan Dean, of course. Can't forget the best outside back on the pitch. And we're going to talk about that. I think in a future episode, we need to reevaluate our 4 outside backs and compare Jonathan Dean to Alonso Aceves, to Miguel Navarro, to Arnaud Souquet, and see where they stack up. Because a lot of people are down on Jonathan Dean, and a lot of people are high on Jonathan Dean, and we're going to have to break that down a little bit to see if the Fire really need to go out and sign some more outside backs this offseason along with everybody else. But getting back to the New York City game, the Chicago Fire had an expected goals of 1. Given those 15 shots, they were so poor in quality and in scoring chances, they were only expected to score 1 goal out of those 15 shots. Now, New York City, conversely, had a 0.9 XG on 14 shots, so at least they were meeting that average. The Chicago Fire's highest quality chance came in the 16th minute when Fabian Herbers took a left-footed shot. That was given a 16.73% chance of scoring. That was their best one. They had a couple others in 15% chance scoring. I believe Kamara had one, Kutsias had one. But other than that, really not much coming from the Fire offense. We've said it all season. Now let's take a look at the Fire's defense and how they gave up that goal. The play starts on the Fire's left wing, and I was actually really upset to see Gutierrez not tracking back harder. I know it's the 64th minute. I know he's a young player still, and it's the last game of a long season, especially for him, having some U.S. Olympic duty as well. But he is not tracking back and putting pressure on the ball carrier who's bringing the ball across the midfield line. He's the nearest player. He's playing on the left. That's his position, right? He needs to be there putting pressure on the ball carrier because that ball carrier plays a nice, easy, uncontested pass to the goal scorer, Fernandez of New York City. Now, the other thing that doesn't help is the defensive back line just keeps backpedaling and backpedaling and backpedaling until they get to about the 18-yard line. And you're seeing a lot of defensive tactics, both with the Fire and generally around the league and around world soccer, where they say, okay, hold the 18, hold the 18. Problem is, attackers are getting a lot better. And when you hold the 18, you need to put pressure on the ball. So the Fire backpedal to the 18, which, I don't like it, but I can see how that is part of a tactic or a strategy. But Fede Navarro does not get back enough to put pressure on Fernandez. Aceves and Chijos end up marking the same man to the left of the Chicago Fire defense. Chihos does not step up to take on Fernandez, put pressure on him. They're not communicating, and can you blame them? I don't know. Is there a language barrier? Maybe. The fact that Aceves and Chihos have been barely playing together on the pitch during the season, that just speaks to how bad Aceves has been, and he's not getting on the pitch. And then what are you doing in practice, by the way? What are you doing in practice if you can't figure out your backline communications? Ugh, just more frustrations, right? So they don't communicate, and Fernandez has a great look on goal. Now, I am not going to take anything away from how amazing his shot was. It was a beautiful shot. In fact, looking at the shooting chart, the expected goal, I mean, that was given like a couple % chance to go in. Like, I don't even think that was a 10% chance of going in, but he really placed it perfectly to bend it around Chris Brady, who makes just one heck of an effort. But there was no goalkeeper on the planet who's going to stop this perfectly placed, curving, bending shot, far post, upper 90. It was a beautiful goal. And again, all credit to Fernandez. But when you have your two midfielders not getting any pressure as the play develops, and when you have your back line backing up and not knowing how to rotate and step up and put pressure on the shooter, this is what's going to happen. And again, it's the Chicago Fire's back line being completely lost in transition. So New York City wins, but they still do not make the playoffs. The Chicago Fire lose and are out of the playoffs, and that is how it stands. We see Red Bull and Charlotte sneaking in and getting that 8 and 9 wild card spot for the playoff race. Now let's look our first take here at the Chicago Fire season in review. All right, we're going to look at some of the statistical leaders of the club and how they compare to the rest of the league. And throughout the offseason, we're going to continue our weekly show, try to put a little more stuff on YouTube, try to maybe reformat some things. So if there's anything you want to see as we go into the offseason or as we prepare for next season, reach out to me on Twitter at GlassHouseSoccer, no E in soccer, thank you, character limits, or you can email me, GlassHouseSoccer, with the E this time, at gmail.com. Now, the team leaders for the Fire in three major categories here: goals, assists, and key passes. Marin Haile Selassie led the team with 6 goals this season. That is your highest scoring player on the Chicago Fire. 6 goals. Your winger, not your strikers, not your $8 million designated player, not your up-and-coming homegrown, but your winger that you had to bring over from your sister club. That's your leading scorer with 6 goals. I mean, credit to Selassie for doing it, but wow, not good if you're the club. By comparison, Denny Bwanga of LAFC won the Golden Boot with 20 goals, and there were a number of other players in the 18 to 16 range, who are 3 times the goal scoring power of your best goal scorer here, Chicago Fire. Marin Haile Selassie's 6 goals tied him for 45th in Major League Soccer. So the Chicago Fire boast the 45th leading scorer in Major League Soccer. And I understand that there are a lot of teams who do play and score goals by committee, but tell me a top team in MLS who you cannot point to and say that's the goal scorer, right? You want to look at Cincinnati. Well, you know that Lucho Acosta is setting things up. You know that Brandon Vasquez is a goal scorer, right? And I'm sure there's a couple other guys who are having really good seasons as well, whose name escaped me right now. You want to look at Orlando City, you have Cuno Torres, you have Duncan McGuire. You want to look at Columbus, you've got Cucho. You had Zelarayan, now you got Rossi. You want to look at Atlanta, you've got Almada and Giacomakis. You can point to players immediately. Again, I follow the league and the Fire. These are just names that I know because of how influential they are in their games. Right? Even New York City, Talis Magno. There's the guy who should be scoring goals for you. You want to look at Nashville, you got Schaffelberg, Mukhtar, Godoy to a certain extent. You can pick guys who you know are going to be in the goal scoring conversation every single week. With the Chicago Fire, I don't know. You don't know who's going to be that guy scoring for you week in and week out. I don't know if we're going to get there next season either. Because here's one of the rumors that I have heard is that Kasper Shabilko got a contract extension through 2025. Let me pause, let that sink in, and I'll say it again. The rumor is Kasper Shabilko has gotten a contract extension through 2025. Now, this is coming to me from Alex Campbell of the CHGO Fire podcast. He mentioned it on their last podcast episode, and we messaged, and he has told me that all sources and info indicate Shabilko was extended through 25. It was just never announced by the Fire. Yikes. So our goal scoring is going to still be tied to Kasper Shabilko to some extent over the next year or two. Now, why? Why would the Fire do this? Well, here's my speculation. If it's an on-the-field move, maybe their next coach, if it is Kostenoglu, wants to run a two-striker system where Shabilko was successful in Philadelphia. Or with Kai Kamara leaving, he said, I'm going to play in MLS. I played my last game for this club. All right, fine, bye. There's the door, Kai. See ya. Like, I'm okay if he walks. Maybe they do want a veteran backup behind Koutsias and whoever else they bring up. Is it Becerra? Is it an international signing? Who knows? But that would be an on-the-field reason to keep Shabilko. He is your backup. He's going to come in 15, 20 minutes at the end of every match, or he's going to be a second striker playing with Koutsias and maybe not as mobile, maybe not covering as much ground, but can work with Koutsias 1-2. As far as like financial reasons, maybe they got him on a great deal, or this is some sort of sign and trade, and that's possibly why they're not announcing it until they actually get the trade part of the sign and trade done and worked out and pen to paper, so to say, with the other club. You don't want to violate any FIFA rules or anything like that. So that, again, I'm speculating on this rumor here. Or maybe it's a goodwill move. This was something that Joe Chat said on the CHGO Fire podcast when he was a guest of Alex's, that it could be a goodwill move, that the Fire is trying to do something for Kasper Shabilko. But you know what? For a guy that has not been engaged, who has actively made comments against the Fire, who has done everything he can to miss goals, apparently, I don't know how much goodwill is there unless there's some personal thing that we don't know about as fans right now. But regardless, it is a disappointing rumor to hear if it is in fact true. So keep that in mind. Now, getting back to our individual play, goal scorers, again, Martin Haile Selassie, your leading goal scorer on the Fire with 6. Brian Gutierrez, however, leads the team with assists, 9 on the season. Now, the league leader, Thiago Almada of Atlanta, had 19 assists on the season. So Gutierrez, with his 9 assists, tied for 20th in Major League Soccer. So I would say not the worst thing, but if he's going to be your primary playmaker, he needs to be doing more. I think Gutierrez really relied on Shaqiri for a lot of the season, and the switch needs to go off, or the light bulb needs to go on for Gutierrez that, no, I can be the one, and I should be the one making those plays. We've heard it about other players in the past, young players especially, who are very talented. They just need to have that aha moment of, I can do this, I can take on guys, I can make this happen, and I'm okay with it, and I'm comfortable with it. And if Gutierrez has that moment, and I think he was really building towards in the second half of this season, if he has that moment in this offseason, then he should be much better than 9 assists next season. Maybe if he had some better strikers, those numbers would have gone up as well. But that tied him for 20th in the MLS. Gutierrez is tied for 37th in Major League Soccer with key passes. He had 37 key passes this season. That is 37 passes that lead to a shot. So it's essentially giving you credit for your strikers missing. But still, he was 37th in Major League Soccer. The league leader, Christian Espinoza of San Jose, led Major League Soccer with 93 key passes. So again, Gutierrez has a long way to go to be the primary playmaker and a standout in the league. Also, I looked at a few other categories, passing, attacking, some defending stuff, tackles, etc. And there was really no Chicago Fire player. In fact, there wasn't a Chicago Fire player in the top 30 of any other individual category. So this team has a long way to go. Now, where we did stand out, Chris Brady, again, those are field players I was talking about. Chris Brady ended up with 8 clean sheets, so not very good relative to some other goalkeepers, but was 6th in goals allowed. That does have a lot to do with the defense. And honestly, the fact that he was 6th in goals allowed, I think shows just how good he is, because the defense really did let him down in a number of games this season. He was 8th in total saves, but tied for 18th in save percentage. So that's one of those where Brady's going to make 5 and 6 saves a game, but still give up 2 goals, and it's going to really ruin his percentage. He only ended up with a 68.1% save percentage, again, 18th in the league. By comparison, Jordy Petrovic of New England led the league with a 78.6 save percentage. So there are your individual leaders for the big stats, kind of the main statistics here that a lot of people look at. And the Fire have a long way to go. But if you can get a good striker to come in, and you can have Salase, you can have Gutierrez, you can have Chris Mueller, hopefully coming back healthy, and then maybe a couple of your outside backs chipping in. Maybe Tehran gets 2 or 3 on some set pieces. If you can have all those guys between the 3 and 6 goals range, and then you bring in a striker who can bang in 15, you're going to be in a lot better position. I think you're going to see Gutierrez numbers in all categories go up, and I think you're going to see all our defensive numbers go up as well. So that's my takes on the NYC game, on kind of a little bit of recapping the Fire season here. Right now, we're going to pause on the YouTube side, and we're going to splice in John Donovan's segment. So make sure you go follow Feed the Fire on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts so you can hear John Donovan's final comments on the regular season. And I will remind you, John Donovan's segment is brought to you by Skira Icelandic Spring Water. Icelandic for clear, Skira water comes from a spring in a government-protected nature preserve in Iceland with naturally low mineral content. This isn't your average water. Clearly, pun intended, it's one of the best. And with that, we will take a short pause and bring in John Donovan. John, thank you so much for your contribution this show as well as throughout the entire season. I know it was tough to watch and probably tougher to talk about every time, but we do appreciate you week in and week out giving your thoughts. And anytime this off season you want to let us know what's on your mind, go ahead, reach out. We're happy to bring in further audio from you. One final rumor before we move into the picks and predictions on the playoffs. The rumor is the navy blue kit is gone after this season. That is kind of what I'm seeing from a couple Chicago Fire insiders, so to say, on Twitter, on social media, that the navy blue kit will be gone, which I assume means there's a red kit coming back. Maybe. We'll see. The only thing I can contribute to that is I went on Dick's Sporting Goods website, and the navy kit was on sale. Like I bought one because it was on sale, replica jersey, and to the purchase price plus taxes plus shipping didn't even cost me $60. It was like $58, $59 total. So yeah, I jumped on that. I thought that was a pretty good deal. And if they are, not going to make any more, I'm glad I got it. I love that little water tower pattern design that was faded into the kit there. But now looking at the MLS Cup playoffs, we have my playoff picks and predictions here. This was a little bit more of a gut check, a kind of a gut prediction, I should say, a little instinctual, just kind of looking at the matchups. What I really had a hard time analyzing is that first round. Remember, it's best of 3. So in a one game, I would have taken, I may have taken Columbus over Atlanta, but seeing them play 3 games, I think Atlanta might have the edge. I know Almada is out with his red card suspension for the first game, but he's going to come back for the next 2. So that was made the analysis a little bit more difficult, made the predictions a little bit more difficult. One other thing too that I did look at, in order to win MLS Cup, you need to win 4 straight games. 5 if you're in the wild card spot, but I don't think a low-seeded team has made a run to the MLS Cup since Portland did it. When was that? However many years ago? I forget. Was that 2018? Possibly. So it's really difficult to go on a 4-game winning streak here. The only teams to have a 4-game win streak during the regular season that are in the playoffs: Cincinnati, St. Louis, Philadelphia, and Nashville. So 3 Eastern Conference teams and the top team in the Western Conference. Those are the only 4 who have gone on a 4-game win streak. And I just mean win streak. I'm not talking about point streak, because there are several more teams who have gone on, 5, 6, 7-game point streaks. These teams also went on extended point streaks, if you want to look at that. But just strictly on wins, only Cincinnati, St. Louis, Philadelphia, and Nashville have had 4-game win streaks. The other 2 teams to have 4-game win streaks, but that did not make the playoffs: Portland and Montreal. So here are my predictions. Let me know what you think. Reach out, play the MLS Bracket Challenge game. My wild card picks, I'm taking Charlotte over Red Bulls. I'm taking Kansas City over San Jose. Now, looking at the Eastern Conference, I have Cincinnati beating Charlotte. I have Philadelphia over New England, and staying in that kind of quadrant of the bracket, I have Cincinnati beating Philadelphia. Also in the East, I've got Atlanta over Columbus. Sorry, Connor. I have Orlando over Nashville. Sorry to my kids, who Nashville's their second team. They love Hani Mukhtar. And then I've got Atlanta over Orlando. Again, I just like that offense. Maybe it's the Greek in me. Maybe it's Giacomakis not winning the Golden Boot and having a point to prove. Maybe it's Brad Guzan having a point to prove in his final season. Almada wanting to win a trophy before he goes and plays in some big league overseas. I don't know. But then I also have Atlanta beating Cincinnati. I have the 6th seed Atlanta United, the Five Stripes, representing the Eastern Conference in the MLS Cup final. Again, more kind of instinctual reactions, but the more I think about it, the more I kind of sell myself on Atlanta's offense winning these games for them. Now, I know a lot of the thinking is defense wins championships, defense travels, especially in these 3 games. But looking at the Eastern Conference, like, Columbus wasn't that good of a defensive team. They're actually the best offensive team in terms of goals scored in the Eastern Conference. But Atlanta was only one behind them. Is Cincinnati and going to have a good defensive performance? Is Orlando going to have a good defensive performance? I don't know. I think there's questions there. And I think Atlanta can outscore their opponents throughout the course of these playoffs, despite not having a 4-game win streak during the regular season. Looking in the Western Conference, though, I'm going big upset here. I am going to pick Kansas City over St. Louis in a 3-game leg, a 3-game series. I don't know why. I think it's because I want it to happen. Partly because I'm from Chicago and I don't want to see St. Louis win anything else. Partly because Kansas City was my team way back when the league started and Chicago hadn't entered yet. I just really want Kansas City to go out with something. I don't have them getting to the MLS Cup final or winning anything like that, but I think this will be their MLS Cup, and it'll be beating St. Louis. I've got Houston over Real Salt Lake. But hey, who knows how that could play out? That's one matchup I'm not confident on. And then I also have Kansas City over Houston. That is my shake up in the bracket, that quadrant of the bracket up there. I know I'm going to get a lot of pushback from this one, but that's just what I'm feeling at this moment in time. In the bottom portion of that Western Conference bracket, I've got LAFC over Vancouver. I have Seattle over Dallas. And then I have LAFC advancing past Seattle and Kansas City to make the finals again. And despite how good LAFC would have been playing in the playoffs, I've got Atlanta winning the Cup. Those are my picks and predictions, everyone. Let me know what you think. I know it's not popular. I know it's not a lot of chalk, but I think it's going to be a fun postseason regardless of who you're picking and who you're watching. One other little bit of MLS news to note, as well as a little USMNT news. Michael Bradley of Toronto FC most recently announced his retirement. If you want to recap his whole career on and off the pitch, go listen to the Extra Time podcast. They do a fairly long-winded job of praising Michael Bradley. But I got to say, I think Michael Bradley, in terms of MLS, he had a huge impact coming over from Italy back to MLS, really picking that Toronto club up and making them kind of a model franchise for a period of time. I really had a love-hate relationship with him, watching him on the USMNT. I think he had a lot of bad play, but had a lot of great play as well, and was a member of some great USMNT moments, as well as a member of some really, really terrible USMNT moments. But the fact that he had done it for so long, that he always seemed to pick himself up for those Mexico games, and the fact that he really locked in with Javinko and Altidore to give us one of the best regular seasons in MLS history. It has to go with mentioning. So Michael Bradley retired. The speculation is we'll see him coaching somewhere not in the too distant future, but we'll address that when the time comes. With that, fans, I want to thank you all for tuning in, listening, please share the show, share the link, send it to your friends, send it to your enemies if you don't like them, or if they don't like soccer, send it to them. Let's continue to grow the show, especially in this off season. There's still going to be great content coming out here on Feed the Fire, on Glass House Soccer, and we hope you continue to be a part of it. Thanks again, everyone.